Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News, South Florida Conservative News Service. It is a beautiful sunny day, Saturday, March 28th, 9:51 a.m. here in Florida. And to introduce the topic, I will use an intro which somebody of this type would do for them. Because today we're going to talk about clavicular. And from the locals, here would be a little intro from him. Clavicular, low key a philosopher, but also a whole product for real. Bro got that David Bowie, Thin White Duke vibe on lock. A straight up modern day construct like Bro was literally manufactured for the timeline. That's a lot to take in. So let's take it in. All right. If I told you that that description was for one of the fastest rising figures on the internet, who doesn't actually give you any answers, doesn't explain himself very clearly, he doesn't resolve his ideas, and yet millions of people are watching him. And honestly, at current, I think he's going to jail for assault. But some think he's a genius, others think he's a grifter, and a lot of people aren't sure what to think at all because, as you heard from my initial bit there, it's kind of hard to understand what the hell's going on. But that is clavicular. And that confusion, that might be the point of it all, actually. So, clavicular isn't just another influencer. He's something different, something that feels harder to categorize. As you know, like I said, to his followers, he's decoding hidden systems of power. To critics, he's monetizing ambiguity. And in the mainstream, many of whom are just discovering through parody. He was on they parodied him on Saturday Night Live, I guess a week or two ago. I'd heard about him through one of the younger guys, but it was just funny that he came on. So he said, let's do this. Most people watching that Saturday Night Live thing, because they are trying to get a younger audience, he's a big question mark. And the key is that ambiguity isn't a flaw in his character. It's the model. If you really want to understand clavicular, you have to go way back. So, like I said, somebody would spend a little time on this. And I'll say we can go to Socrates. Socrates called himself a gadfly, someone whose job was to provoke society, to irritate it into thinking. He didn't lecture, he asked questions. He forced people to confront what they believed. Clavicular operates in a similar way, but with a modern twist. He doesn't argue directly, he doesn't finish his thoughts, he suggests and then steps back. And what happens? The audience fills in the gaps. They complete the ideas themselves, and that is a powerful thing to have happen because once someone feels like they've arrived at a conclusion on their own, they're much more likely to believe it. On the surface, clavicular sells what a lot of the modern personalities sell. He's got access, communities, courses, I'm sure, etc., and all that. But underneath that, he's selling something entirely different. He's selling the idea that there's a hidden system that most people don't see it and that he does. And if you stick close enough to him, you might start to see it too. This isn't educational in the traditional sense. It's something closer to interpretation as a service. So here's where things get interesting for those of you who are not just following, if you're not 20 years old or 18 years old, and you're looking at this from world movements or lenses. Clavicular doesn't just communicate, he destabilizes. There are all kinds of claims and stories and rumors floating around about him. Some are probably exaggerated. Some might be jokes that he's put out himself. Some might be intentional provocations, like the looks maxing, the hitting himself with the hammer. And he told somebody he didn't wear condoms because the drugs he was taking made him sterile. All kinds of crazy shit. Women have to sign NDAs to be in his house. And whether they're true or not, they almost don't matter because they're all doing the same thing. They are forcing a reaction. People stop scrolling, they argue, they share, and most importantly, they're asking, is he serious? That question is the engine. It's not belief, it's not truth, it is uncertainty. If this feels familiar, which it should, because we had a version of this before, which I think is a much better version, or at least it was for the time period, my old friend, yay, Kanye West. Kanye mastered the art of saying things that blurred the line between sincerity and performance. Was he serious? Was he art? What is it? Chaos? And that ambiguity drove attention. But the difference is Kanye built his authority first, his music empire, his fashion empire, before he started disrupting everything. Now, Clavicular is doing the opposite. He's trying to build authority through disruption itself. It's a much riskier play, but it's also a very modern one. And this is where the bigger picture comes into focus. For a long time, cultural figures were packaged. Elvis, the Beatles, all that kind of stuff. They were shaped by labels, actors by studios, and influencers by brand. Even the rebellion was curated, and something changed, especially after COVID, which I don't think we studied enough, the after effects of the psychological damage inflicted worldwide by the COVID epidemic. You had isolation, you had fragmentation, you had conflicting information, you had a further breakdown of the parental child unit, especially with broken families because they weren't able to get together or the parents themselves didn't understand what was going on. There's a lot happening in that whole dynamic that we haven't touched as a society, and we need to because a lot of it has bled out into the streets and mostly peaceful protest. And suddenly, people weren't just consuming personalities anymore. They were looking for something that felt real. Even if it was messy or unclear, Clavicular feels unpackaged, not very polished, not filtered, emergent, and that matters. He gets tripped up in conversations. People say something and he hurt his feelings. He is not one of these guys that plays this masturbatory debate game, which seems to be the thing these days, which I find to be totally useless. But that's me. And what most people are missing, and this isn't new, but those of you who are historians may think about this. After the Black Death, the bubonic plague, Europe went through something similar. Institutions were weaker, certainty collapsed, and into that vacuum came new figures. Preachers, mystics, reformers, strange movements that hadn't existed before that because we could all be dead tomorrow. People offering new ways to understand the world. They were either visionaries or frauds or dangerous, and sometimes all three at once. And Clavicular fits that pattern, not because the situations are identical, but because the response to disruption is. So, what is he really? Is he a genuine provocateur, someone pushing people to think differently, or is he an operator, guiding interpretation without ever committing to it? He's probably in there in both because his model allows him to exist in two states at once. If you take him serious, he's insightful. If you take him ironically, he's clever. So either way, he kind of wins. And that brings us to the bigger point. Clavicular isn't just a person. He is a reflection of the system we are all operating in right now. A system that rewards uncertainty, it rewards conflict, also participation, right? So where clarity doesn't spread as fast as confusion for many reasons, where engagement matters more than truth, in that system, the most powerful position isn't being right, it's being interesting enough that people can't look away. So Clavicular isn't trying to dominate the conversation. He's trying to reshape how the conversation works. He provokes more than he explains. He suggests more than he declares, and he thrives in the space between, right? He may get absorbed, he may get exposed, he may go to jail, he may fade out quiet entirely, but his rise will tell us something important. People aren't waiting for institutions to define their role models anymore. They're finding them in real time and where they can, even if they don't fully understand them. And maybe that is the real shift, not who Clavicular is, but why a figure like him is working so well at this time. That would be the whole thing for it. So, like I said, I think as of the time of what's doing this, he is up for assault and battery or battery. I'm not sure which. did something stupid in Orlando, or he was down here in Miami, I think, doing something dumb. But that's a whole other reason now that people are looking for the clout, as they say, that just punching a guy like this is enough to get you viral. So it's do something like this guy's doing or fame at any price. There's a lot going on out there. So keep your eyes and ears open, and we will talk about something else later on. Goodbye.